So excited to be here today and to discuss with you a topic that is just my passion, my heart, my purpose. And I work within the corporate space. I work individually. I work with small businesses, mid-level size companies, and also nonprofit organizations. Just as a way to also to give back and to continue spreading this message. But my name is Maria Maldonado Smith. I should start with that first, and I am the creator of executive vision imagery, which is creating the vision for your future through this power, the science of goal setting and the power of vision imagery. I am an avid believer, a firm believer. Avid supporter of goal setting and a firm believer that most everything that we work to achieve in life can be accomplished by writing our goals down and putting a visual roadmap along with it in order to get to a desired result. And I think that we don't do that enough as we are moms and caregivers and running companies and taking care of kids and doing all of the things. We're not taking the time to pour back into ourselves and invest in ourselves so that we can be the best and most authentic version of us. So that's what I love to do. And I hope that today you will have this guide to seeing your dreams come to fruition throughout this process. Right. So, why vision imagery? Interestingly enough, when I set out to start my company, it was one of the things that um, I when I decided to go this route. I was in corporate for over 18 years. I decided that vision imagery was something that um, needed to be more present in people's lives because 80 to 90% of us are visual learners. So when we say why vision imagery, it's because 89% of us learn spatially and humans prefer visuals. So this is just, a quote that I found from search enginejournal.com. Sam Hollinsworth, who also has written a lot of other tools and resources around just visual learning and kind of what it means to be a visual learner. And in school, when we're in school, think about how teachers will use guides or think about movies, different things. I'll give you some prompts here along the way throughout the presentation that'll have you thinking, oh, wow, I do align with the things that are out in the universe and out in my world visually with also how I process information. Right. So this is actually interactive as well, this presentation. So I want to hear from you guys what percentage, and if you can just drop it, I think in the chat feature, and hopefully I can figure out how to see where that is. Oh, yep, I see it. What percentage of Americans write down their goals? If you want to drop that in the chat feature, I would love to hear from you on what percentage you think. Okay, 10%. All right. Well, okay. All right. Oh, sorry. Hold on, we got one more. Sorry. Okay, 17. Okay. Oh, write about them, but don't articulate it. Yep, yep. So you guys are closer probably because you're more aligned with your goals, being more entrepreneurial minded women and women who are focused on kind of building a business. But you'll be surprised that it's less than 3%. Less than 3% of Americans write their goals down. I've been asked in the past, and so I'll just share this with you. Globally, it's about 20%, anywhere from 18 to 20%. But the specific study that this information comes from is by Dr. Gail Matthews, which is actually one of the only studies that's truly been done on actual goal setting that really looks at what happens when people write down their goals. If you've ever heard Marie Forleo speak to 42% of people are more likely to accomplish their goals just by writing them down, she's getting that statistic from this study. So less than 3% of Americans write their goals down, but we know that we're 42% more likely just simply by writing them down. So fantastic odds, right? If we just put pen to paper. Yeah, that's why I got 17 from them. Yeah, right. Because globally we are at about 17 but 18 to 20% globally. So astounding, right? What's even more astonishing is that of the less than 3% of Americans that write down their goals daily, write them down, only 1% of them work on them daily. And I always share with people that Warren Buffett gave, he always speaks whenever he has his big summit every year. And one of the things that he mentioned one year in talking about the habits of very successful people, specifically millionaires and billionaires, because everyone that, comes to his shareholders event, of course, they're all going because they want to be him. They want to be the next Warren Buffett. They want to be the next millionaire, the next billionaire. They want to invest. They want to grow. They want to build, scale, etc. And so the advice that he gave was the difference that sets millionaires and billionaires apart from the rest is that they're writing their goals down daily, but they're not just writing them down daily. They're actually allowing themselves to write them, to look at them multiple times a day. They're allowing themselves to tweak them, to rewrite them if necessary. They're calibrating consistently. So they're not just saying, this is my goal and I'm going to get there. They're figuring out how to get there, but also how to get there also means that we might need to figure out a different goal, or we might find that something's not working. And instead of just being persistent and pushing through, we're actually tweaking the process and figuring out a new way to be successful. And so he said that was the difference between those two kind of subsets of our society. And when I think about the top 1% of people, and the top 1% of wealth and how that is achieved and attained, and then you look at how 1% of people of millionaires and billionaires are working on their goals daily, they're very much aligned. I think it's the irony is that they're correlated. So, like we said earlier, yet we're 42% more likely to achieve our goals by simply writing them down. However, very few of us are actually doing that. And so my next question, and this will actually come later in the presentation, so I'll hold off for it because I'll give you guys an opportunity to share some your thoughts. And also, if you want to unmute and share as well, I appreciate that too, because I love hearing from everyone. So the bottom line is that we all want to lead meaningful, purpose-filled lives, right? But how can we do that if we're not taking the time to kind of go through the steps and we're not taking the time to go through that process? I think this is something too that whenever I'm in schools, I'm doing a career day on Friday for fourth graders, and I'm super excited because this is really where that starts. This process for me, and you'll hear about that a little bit later. This process started for me when I was in the third grade. My third grade teacher, she told us to get out a piece of paper and write down the top 3 things we wanted to accomplish. There was really no parameters around it. She didn't say this year. She just said top 3 things you want to accomplish. So the beauty in that is that some kids said, okay, well, I've got 3 things I want to accomplish before the end of this year. Some people, like myself, said, I got some big goals for my life. And I wrote those 3 goals down. And so in doing so, it really started the path for me to start to see my future and to start to see the success, but actually realize it through a process. I later transferred that to a Post-it note. That Post-it note stayed on my mirror till I was a senior in high school. And when I went to college, I would write those goals down in a notebook. I would write them down, just to remind myself every single day of where I was headed, because I wanted to create that success for my future. I had very long-term goals. And so we'll talk about that too. So today we're going to solve for this problem. We're going to set the foundation in your life as to why vision imagery really is the key to unlocking your why and your how. And I love that it's so deeply rooted in science, because oftentimes when you mention vision imagery or vision boarding, people think, oh, this is so woo, this is so cheesy. But it works. It works. We know it works because we actually can rewire our brain to welcome in the information that we are priming it to see out in the world. And that was what is so incredibly fascinating about how our mind and our brain works to guide us and assist us in accomplishing our goals. Oh, so save okay. I mean, Bianca, you are more than welcome to share now if you want.
I was just going to say, you were talking about, writing down your goals and stuff since third grade. Although this wasn't goal writing, I learned also in the third grade just how powerful it is to put pen to paper. And basically, so my parents are divorced, long story, but short story is that when my dad, I missed his birthday, and I was like, I don't know, how old are you in third grade? 8?
8.
6?
Yeah, you're like 8, 9 years old.
Yeah, so I was 8, and I forgot to call my dad for my dad's birthday. It's May 3rd. And one day that year, he called me a few days later. He goes, "You didn't call me for my birthday." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," whatever. Like, what does an 8-year-old say? And then he goes, I want you to do this. He goes, I want you to get a pen in your notebook and I want you to write down May 3rd is my dad's birthday. And although it was kind of a little harsh, maybe he took it a little personal, he made me write it 20 times. So I wrote down May 3rd is my dad's birthday 20 times and I never forgot it again. And ever since then, it's the same implication with with goals, right? I write certain goals over and over and over again. And yeah, it's totally a thing. I love it.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that because it's so true. It's that consistency and that repetition. And that also, we know that psychologically that's priming and prepping our brain when we are consistently doing something. That's why when we talk about habit formation and building positive habits, that's why we have to do something so consistently. That's why we say that it takes, 20 to 30 days, 21 to 28 days. I believe honestly that building a habit is a lifetime of work because I can very easily tell myself to unhabit myself to take that habit away. So it's something you have to consistently and consciously work on until it becomes something that is unconscious. And oftentimes when we're working to move from that unconscious to that conscious to an unconscious state of mind, when it comes to our goals, it's exactly what you did, Bianca, of writing it repetitive multiple times. It's consistently reviewing it every single day. And I think really that's the message that Warren Buffett was sharing when he said the difference between millionaires and billionaires is that they're not just writing them down, they're writing them down daily. They're tweaking them. They're actually looking at them multiple times a day. They're revisiting them. They're making sure that they are staying on top of what it is that they want to achieve, because we know that if we don't, the world's going to pull us in every other different direction. So if we're not aligned with our goals on a consistent basis, meaning we're not looking at them, we're looking at them daily and we're ensuring that everything that we're doing aligns with that, then we're absolutely going to get caught up in, kind of the stuff that the mindless scrolling, the times that go by that we're like, wait, what did we just do for the last hour? Nothing really truly productive. And then that's when we seem to feel overwhelmed because we have run out of time or we've not done what we said we were going to do. And now we start to give up. We start to make excuses. We start to put ourselves last because we think, oh, it's just too difficult. So I love this process because just like what you said, something that's so simple, and I tell people this all the time, it is so simple and basic, and yet this is the step that people don't do. We don't even take the first step, which is just to write our goals down. But doing so repetitively absolutely helps. So thank you for sharing that. All right. So in this one, I said, like I said earlier, I think I already said this, but we'll use science to back it up because as they say in business, numbers never lie. And I've also got some really cool stats too. So by the numbers, only 20% of people globally, so I shared this earlier, set goals for themselves. Yep. However, 61% of goals written down are achieved. So that's the really cool thing. Now, you can actually increase that. 61% in this study, 61% of goals written down were achieved. Now, here's the caveat to it. They wrote down their goals. They were in 5 different groups, and this was group 4 that achieved that. And the piece of that they did not have was they did not have an accountability. The people who wrote down their goals, formulated action commitments, and shared their goals with their friends and made like a visual roadmap for that, their success rate increased to 64%. So we know that when we are all in and we're contributing every single aspect of the process, we know that we're going to be 64% more likely to accomplish those goals. But still, 61% is not bad odds. But accountability is a huge piece of that. In 90% of studies, setting specific and challenging goals does lead to much better results. However, only 8% of people who set New Year's resolutions actually achieve them. How many of you set New Year's resolutions?
Not resolutions, but on January 1st, I said that for this year, I'm really going to prioritize myself and being a little bit more selfish. So it's not like a goal, but it's just an overall kind of mindset shift.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I tell people not to set resolutions, but more intentions. Like, what are their intentions for the year? Because resolutions really create they create such a rigidity around. And that's why, this is why I'm not a fan of them, because people will set them thinking I have to be 100% all in. There's no room for inconsistency. There's no room for grace. There's no room for anything. We almost set ourselves up to fail. And I mean, 92% of people fail. 62% of them give up within a month. Only 8% actually carry that all the way through. And I would honestly be more inclined to say that it's because those 8% of people are most likely setting more intentions than resolutions, and they're most likely calling that. Okay, Blythe. Yep, I switched to doing quarterly goals. Yes, to make it more manageable. I have a lot of my corporate clients, that's how they operate. So whether they're on a fiscal or a calendar year, they operate in the in a quarterly goal. I also, yes, set yearly intentions of things that I would like to focus on. I love that. That's so intentional and so purposeful as well, because now you are aligning what you want to do and what you want to accomplish with a certain time frame. Now, question for you. Do you have goals that continue throughout each quarter and you're just making like progress throughout? Or are you setting more short-term goals? Both. Okay. Gotcha.
My husband and I, we did goals. We broke down our household into sections, so personal, and then like home improvement, and then, whatever, all the different sections. And then we're doing goals that basically stack on top of each other per quarter. So we have one big goal by the end of the year, but we're starting small in Q1 and they kind of stack on top of each other. So that was our breakdown.
I really appreciate that, because so much of what I work with sometimes in the individual client space is people who will come with really large goals, and then they find them to be unmanageable and overwhelming. And what I always say to them is, no, they don't have to be as overwhelming and as unmanageable as you think they are. It's because you're not taking the time to break them down into what I like to call milestones. And I always share with people this story that a friend of mine told me. She runs marathons. She loves it. And she loves the rock and roll marathons. And the reason is because she said that she loves the bands every couple miles, I think there's a new band. And she said that the reason she always likes that, and that's how she kind of gets into her mindset. That's the visual she paints whenever she's also trying to accomplish a goal, is she's like, just get to the next band. It's like her version of how she goal sets. And so while she's running the race, she's like, I know when I get to the next, to a band, I just have to make it to the next one. And she's like, and typically, for the first quarter mile after I've run past the band, I can still kind of hear them in the background. And then I'm like, okay, now I can't hear a band. So now I've just got to wait to get to the next one. That's how she gets herself through the race. Cause she's like, Maria, if I looked at it as 26, plus miles, there's no way. She's like, I'd give up at the very beginning. She's like, but if I break it down into every couple miles, she was like, by the time I look down, I'm at 18 and I'm like, I got this. I now can do this. It's a lot more manageable. And that's one of the things that I find most consistent with people when they give up on their goals or they find themselves fizzling out and not staying consistent. It's because they've made the goal so big that they can't manage it, and they haven't created those milestones for themselves in the process. All right. Okay. So here's the question. And this is also open for conversation. So if you guys want to, unmute and just share what you think, but why? Why do you think people give up? Why are those who write their goals down more successful? Why do you think there's only 3% of Americans that write their goals down? I always am fascinated by this.
I think it's like anything, right? When something is top of mind for you constantly, then you're more likely to work towards that or be conscious of it. But we have so much going on as entrepreneurs that sometimes you're like, all you're focusing on is posting on social media or, doing X, Y, and Z when your goal is, just for an example, like fundraising, right? So if my goal is fundraising, social media, spending a day on social media is really not going to help me get towards my goal. But if I write down fundraising, then I'm going to be like, okay, well, I need to go on LinkedIn, make connections with investors. So it's more top of mind. And I'm so guilty. I don't write down my goals.
Yeah.
I need to start.
Right. And it's interesting that, and I'm not sure if it's in this presentation or another one, but 87% of small business owners that made did vision imagery, that, that made a vision board for their small business, said that they accomplished 50% of their goals within the first year. Entrepreneurs in and of themselves, also, we are big dreamers. We're big. So we add a lot to our plate. So the fact that, and so I really honestly, I say that because people are like, oh, they only accomplished 50% of your goals. I'm like, yeah, when's the last time you accomplished 50% of yours? If we're not writing them down, then we don't even know. We can't even keep track. But if you've got 10, 10 goals that you're working on for the year for your business and you accomplish 5 of them, well, heck, man, you're halfway there, And so I think that's what you're saying is absolutely resonates with so many of the entrepreneurs that I've worked with and the private clients that I've had as well. I would say that in corporate, it's fear. It comes up a ton, it comes up a lot, that I'm fearful that if I write them down, well, then what happens if I don't accomplish them? Or now that I've written them down, I have to own it. And so that's scary because everything is very safe and protected up here. It's when it leaves here and we speak it into existence by putting pen to paper and writing it down that can become really scary. And the overwhelming fear is actually what stops a lot of people from even writing their goals down. And really fear is such a hindrance to so much of what we work to achieve or accomplish in our life, because our brains are very good at telling us what we want to hear. And if we are afraid of something, our brain will remind us all of the reasons why we are afraid and the things that could go wrong. And so that narrative has to be shifted. And the way we do that is through creating a process that allows us to gain confidence. And that starts with writing our goals down.
So would you say that daily to-do lists, isn't that a sense of writing goals? Because I know in Ball you said you don't write your goals down, but are you like a to-do list person? Because isn't that a small scale?
Yeah. And I have I guess when you were talking about that, Maria, that's what I was kind of thinking, what are goals? Because I have a vision board for myself that I keep on the backdrop of my computer. So I'm looking at it all the time, but those goals are much different than my to-do list, right? Create an affiliate program, or, I'm launching a communities aspect to LMC. That is a huge task. And it's a goal, but to me, it's just a part of the business. That's a task that I have to do. So can you that's a good question, Bianca, because that's exactly what I was kind of thinking. What's the difference between a task and a goal necessarily?
And a goal, right. So the goal is that end result. So if you're wanting to launch the program, the goal is actually the launch. That's when it's launched. That's that goal having been hit. It is all of the milestones, the things along the way become what are the things that you have to do in order to get there. That's when you break it down. I call it just refining the goal to better understand what are your touch points? What are the things that you need to do? To-do lists to me are very task oriented. To-do lists to me are I got to get groceries. I got to do the things the daily stuff that I need just in order to not to survive, but the things that I do to run my house or run the basics. To me, a to-do is I get up every day, I make my bed, I brush my teeth, I do, that to me are just little task oriented things. To me, the goals and writing goals of daily, the way that I break them down is, and I'll use the example of the marathon. If it's 26 miles, then I have a plan and I've broken that down by week. And I know week 1, I've got to accomplish 2 miles today so that I can run 5 miles on Wednesday, so that I can run 6 miles on Friday. And then Wednesday, the days in between, the Tuesday and the Wednesday, is my plan for how I'm going to strength train in order to have the leg muscles to run that race, to get to that point. Those can be called to-dos. I mean, that can be called your to-do list. But here's the thing with to-do lists that I always say too: no more than 3 things on them. And so when we think about writing our goals down, if you're writing your 3 goals down, then underneath each goal, you really should only have 1 to 2 items that you're putting on your supposed to-do list. It's just because we metabolize things better in 3s. And when we start getting outside of that for any one given goal, we start to get overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense a little bit? The goal is that's really that end result. I've crossed the finish line. I've accomplished that goal. the getting there, that is where all of the goal refinement, the milestones, kind of tracking it, like that's the habit formation. That's building those positive habits. That becomes really the foundation of what you work on daily. And then the goal really becomes a byproduct of it. Because essentially what you're trying to build is a visual platform that supports, yes, where you're headed, but that's going to be ever evolving, because once you accomplish that goal, so to speak, which is why if you've ever read Atomic Habits by James Clear, you know, he talks a lot about getting away from the actual goal and not putting so much emphasis on the actual goal. However, we have goals in life. We have things we want to accomplish, and it's okay to say that you want to check something off, that you want to achieve it. But I think that individually every day there are goals that we want to accomplish and achieve, and I think it's all in how you position it. And if you call it a to-do list, if you call it your, you know, your goal list. I do I every day what I do are 3 post-it notes to myself that I put on my mirror, and like those are the things, because I do a lot around my home. I say that I mean virtually. I do a lot of corporate virtual trainings. I am aligned with 3 corporations that I do corporate training for them, and we work on goals. We talk about their KPIs. We do stuff like that. So I'm at home a lot. So you know, I'm looking at my mirror pretty consistently. And when I write those 3 goals down, it's just great for me to be able to pull one of those post-it notes off, and it keeps me aligned with my goals. And then my vision board's close by too. Does that help?
Yeah, I was gonna say this is great. I'm in real estate. I have a real estate office, so goals and going over KPIs is such a big portion of, you know, that real estate industry. And I struggle with it a lot as a leader with my team too, in terms of getting them. I know how to get them inspired to write their goals. I just don't know how to hold them accountable for them. And we talk about SMART goals,
Yep.
but then I struggle beyond that.
Okay. Okay. Yes. So accountability is a huge piece of it. And actually, I'll advance this slide, because we absolutely will get to the accountability piece, because that is huge, Bianca. And I can give you a lot of tips on just how I work with my private clients, and even corporate clients, on the follow-up and the cadence to which I follow up with them. Because yes, there is a cadence where you don't have to feel like you're on top of them daily, but you can still provide a check-in system that's like, hey, I'm going to hold you accountable to these, and we're going to revisit this ever so often. Yes. And so, as I mentioned earlier, you know, 82% of small business owners who used a vision board did report having accomplished half of their goals. Vision boards are, in fact, rooted in that neuroscience. And really, the cool thing about vision imagery is that it activates a part of our brain called the RAS, the reticular activating system in our brain. And it actually helps us filter out unnecessary information to just receive the important stuff. So, what I mean by that is, I spent the bulk of my career in automotive. And so I always ask people, have you ever been car shopping? It's, you know, pretty yes or no. All of us have probably at one point been car shopping, or help a friend look for a car. All right. Oh, sorry. I was trying to find the chat and it went away there for a second. Okay, perfect. Because I just wanted to see if anyone had dropped that in there. But I'm going to assume that all of you guys have been car shopping, or you currently drive a car. Well, being in automotive for 11 years, we actually, one of our agreements was we traded out our car every 6 months. So it was an incredible perk. It was a very beneficial perk that we had, because we got to experience a lot of different kinds of models within the manufacturer's lineup of vehicles. And what I always found was, when I would go pick up the new car, probably similar to an experience that you might have had when you're buying a vehicle, if you had never seen that vehicle before, did you notice that when you drove the car off the lot, now you see that car everywhere? Or you can see
All the
yes.
time.
Yes. So I put a Range Rover because it's my dream car. I did not work for Jaguar or Range Rover, but that is my dream vehicle. And I worked for General Motors, and so whenever I would get a new, Tahoe, or one time I got to drive an Escalade for 6 months, and it's like I just didn't really pay attention that much, and then all of a sudden I got that car, and I'm like, I see it everywhere now. Now I'm seeing it. I even see my color. Um, there's science behind that. Okay, so the next is your favorite movie. Everyone can recall pretty much your favorite movie. If you want to drop just for fun, I always love hearing people's favorite movies. If you want to put that in the chat feature, just because we're big movie people in our family. Growing up, it was always comedies and then action because there were more boys in our house than girls. So the boys always won out. Then I got in trouble in school one time for saying that my favorite movie was Commando because it was apparently rated R and I was like 9 years old. But it was my favorite movie at that time, not anymore. Okay, perfect. In the chat. Oh, the best years of our lives. The Sam. Oh my gosh, we just watched the Sandlot with our kids like 2 weeks ago. Yes. Mamma Mia. Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. I would say that mine is a cross between it's really hard. The Notebook or Shawshank Redemption, which is like two totally different like themes. It's like you got the romance and then you have totally opposite. But those two movies are just, I will never say no to them. My daughter was telling us the other night that her favorite movie is Crazy Rich Asians. She loves it. She read the three books as well. We both read those together. So the reason that all of this, that I ask you this question is because you most likely can, there's something about that movie that you can remember, you can visualize. Remember, 80-90% of us are visual learners. So there's probably a scene that you can remember, or even a line, or you can quote it, right? You can just like raise your hands or nod your heads. Yep. That you're like, that's the reason that was your favorite. All right. Well, the reason is because these two phenomenon are known, of course, as frequency illusion and frequency bias. What it does is it primes and preps your brain to remember that. And most likely you have seen that movie multiple times. You didn't just watch it one time and then remember that it was really impactful. The next time it came on, you liked it so much that you watched it again. Anytime it's on, if it's on regular TV, it's like, for years, we're like, we have this on DVD, but yet we would sit there and watch it when it came on TV because we just liked it so much. Frequency illusion and frequency bias are designed to help us. Now, in some subsets of psychology, they can be referred to as negative. I like to use them and neuroplasticity as well for the positive, because here's the thing. When we have so much content going on around us, we have so much content and information, to the fact that when I was in college, so back in the 2000s, early 2000s, we were told that the average attention span is about 25 minutes on any one given subject. There is new research and data that has just been published, and we are now at about 7 minutes per any one subject. So our attention spans are continuing to be sucked into a vacuum to almost nothing. So when we focus, we need to make sure that what we're focusing on is vastly important to us, because if not, then we're just going to be pulled in all these different directions, and we're going to be giving 7 minutes of our attention away to 50 other things that aren't aligned with our goals. So what frequency illusion and that bias creates is it actually funnels the information. When you activate the reticular activating system in your brain, you're actually telling it, these are the things that I want to focus on. But if we don't have a visual roadmap, well, then we're just going to sit there, pick any image that comes along. We're going to see that car and be like, oh, that car's kind of cool. Or maybe that car is. The way that works with our goals is, oh, cool. Like I might want to run a race. Okay. That's kind of cool. Or, oh yeah, I said I was going to write a book. Oh, that's right. Cool. That's right. I'm going to write a book. Oh, I'm going to do a podcast as well. Yep. Absolutely. Let's do the podcast. We're all over the place. We're not aligned with where we truly want to be focused and where our energy is going to be best utilized. So that's why when we create a visual roadmap to the action plan that we write out, we know we're so much more successful. The study told us we're 64% more likely to accomplish those goals. And as entrepreneurs who are getting pulled in so many different directions, oh my gosh, don't we need that focus? We need the ability to streamline our attention on something that every day is put in front of us that can remind us, oh, that's right, this is what I'm working on. I don't want to get pulled or sucked in to something else because this is what I'm focused on, what I'm working toward. So squirrel, yes. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. I have a million squirrel moments in a day's time sometimes. And And yes, you're right. After those days, I'm exhausted because I've just been pulled in so many different directions. And typically, those are the days that I find I haven't had as much focus on my goals. So I can always correlate it back to, did I have a plan today? Did I really focus on my goals? Or did I just allow the day to take me wherever it went? Okay, so the next question. I'm sure you guys probably can answer this, but what do Michael Phelps, Lindsey Vonn, Oprah, Steve Harvey, and Katy Perry have in common? It's really rhetorical, but oh, sorry, I'm trying to click on the thing. The next thing. They all use vision imagery and vision boarding to help guide their success and to develop out their path to success. I love this next story that I'm going to share with you. Yes, and they all talk about mindset. They all write their goals down. Absolutely. Yes. Um, I have taken Oprah's kind of her guided, mindset and goal setting and everything. She offered it up for free during the pandemic. I'm like, absolutely, I'm going to take it from the queen of all things. And so I took her little session and kind of downloaded the stuff, and it 100% helps just recenter and refocus you. I think these things are great. And the reason is because I also, as much as I teach and coach and develop this out with individual clients, with corporations, with small business, et cetera, I still need it for myself. Coaches need coaches 100%. And so I sometimes can lose my own focus because I'm so rooted in wanting to help others achieve theirs that I will pull away from my own goals. Does that sound familiar to you guys from what you're working to achieve as you are working to build out your businesses? You're like, oh, but let me go help someone else as well. And we also do that sometimes because it takes away the focus on our accountability. So I kind of think to what Bianca was saying earlier on accountability and holding her people accountable. There are some deeply rooted psychological things that we can do to kind of get back in the game in our own mental mindset to say, you know what, I want to help you, but I need to take care of my stuff first, and then I can help you. Because then your mindset becomes focused on, okay, if I want to help them, then I got to hunker down and really focus on this, so that something that's truly important to me, which is helping a staff or a team member, I can actually accomplish that. So everyone's heard of Michael Phelps, right? The most decorated Olympian of all times. The visual image that I get whenever I think of Michael Phelps, and I probably should just replace it with this image, even though that is him, but it's the one of him holding all of his medals and they're just like dangling from his arms. Like that's the visual I get every time I think about Michael Phelps, because I think about all of the gold and the glory and the bronze and the silver and everything that he has won. But one thing he attributes his success to is the power of vision imagery and visualization practices, to the point that he was on a podcast after he had won the last Olympics and said that one of the things that he credited his coach to was the unbelievable power of creating visuals for him and visualization practices, to the fact that before he would even hop in the pool, what he would do is actually visualize the race, the meet, whatever he was going to do. It was the 400, the freestyle, you name it. Before he was even jumping in the pool, he was actually visualizing himself doing all of that. How many strokes was it going to take before he touched the wall, flipped, and then came back? Those types of practices can apply not just to athletes, they can apply to us as well. Think about, my friend who was running her race. Think about, you're building your startup. You're building a company. Okay, what are the things that I need to do? Visualize yourself actually doing those things. Because one thing we also find is that in motivation, the doing actually is what helps us get motivated. So when we visualize ourselves doing something, we're more inclined to actually go out and do it. There was an interesting study done, and it was people who worked out every day. And it was rooted in weight loss too. And people who just thought about working out every day. Believe it or not, the people who just thought about working out every day actually did lose some weight. So not as much as the people in the group that worked out, but that just shows the power of physically walking yourself, mentally walking yourself through a workout every single day. Lifting weights, what does that look like? Building yourself up. I like to say that is us becoming our own hype women. That's us really taking ownership of the things that we want to do and pushing aside this fear and this imposter syndrome or imposter, phenomenon, and saying, no, I'm going to go do this. And so I'm going to visualize myself doing that every single day. I'm going to write it down, and then I'm going to spend time in meditation or reflection actually visualizing myself doing that.
There was somebody, I don't remember where I heard it and how long ago, but somebody said, like, work today as if you're already in the place you want to be, right? And that's exactly what you were just talking about. It's so true, because everybody gets stuck in this like highs and lows of entrepreneurship and like you were saying, imposter syndrome. But if you're really like, I am already a multi-million-dollar company that has millions of users and everyone's engaging and loves everything about Like Minded Collective, then the mindset and how you approach things is it's so different. So I love that reminder. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I am here for it anytime. I think one of my superpowers and one of the things I enjoy doing most is hyping other people up. I really do love it because uh, I have had so many women in my corner who've always hyped me up. And so I think it's also a way for me to give that back and say, okay, I'm going to be here for you in this capacity too, because so many women have done that for me. And to your point, yes, sometimes all we need to hear is just that you can do it, like you are doing it. But we have so much more power than we give ourselves credit for. And our minds are so powerful that so much of what we want to accomplish is truly at our fingertips. And I know I say to corporate companies and individuals that I work with, I'm like, I know it sounds cliche, I know it sounds woo, but listen, the reason these things came about is because they're true. If they weren't, then we wouldn't be consistently seeing them come to fruition. All right. So are you ready? And I always think like, are you ready? So here's the process that I've designed that I have found huge success with, not just within myself, my own life, but we vision board as a family. And I honestly, I say that there's no age that's too young to start getting your kids excited of thinking about what they want to envision for their life, or even if it's just, envision for a toy that they want for their birthday. It, it's, it, expands their creativity. It allows them to express themselves, but it also starts to build the framework. And you cannot plant that seed early enough, because when they go to school, they're going to be inundated with so many things that they have to learn. But I really want to focus them. And that's why I love working with school children, because I want to focus them on things that can really help them, that they can apply throughout their life. And I truly believe that starting with writing down their goals and having them kind of focus on that just gives them that little spark of, you know what, I could do that, because they're fearless at that age as well. And we want to replicate that fearlessness throughout life. But
At
we
what
know
age did you start doing that?
so our littlest is 8. I mean, sorry, 6. I started when I was 8. And then every year just kind of facilitated through on my own. Like we would get friends together, we would have little parties and stuff. And I mean, I wouldn't say that we did it every year, because some years we would just forget. But we would dig that vision board back out and be like, oh my gosh, that was so fun. Like we got to do that again. I think the interesting thing is that conceptually, I don't know that I realized at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, even when I was, 15 and like headed into high school, that that's really what it was doing for me. I just knew that I had those 3 goals, and I kept finding images and vision and visual representation of those in my life to be represented. So it turned from a post-it note that stayed there every day, that I looked at every single day, multiple times a day, to, okay, now let's find images that represent those 3 goals.
Mm-hmm.
Our 6-year-old has been vision boarding since he was 4, but I mean, we laugh and say it's really just a fun craft for him. However, this year it was cute because he actually put books. He said he wanted to read, and he's in kindergarten, so he's learning to read. So he put a lot of pictures of books, a lot of pictures of trucks, because he's obsessed with trucks. And then he put like a skateboard, just little things. And he got a skateboard for Christmas, and he's trying to teach himself how to learn, how to learn how to skateboard. But we also help him. We prep him, and I don't make him go through, my family goes through the workbook. we don't make him go through the workbook. I think it's more so at that age, you're just allowing them to explore things that they're interested in, but giving them some visuals so that they can to keep them on track. One thing that we have with our older two children is we tell them that whatever they start, they have to finish. And I do think that's a great practice for them, because if they put it on their vision board, for example, our daughter played piano for a while, but she wanted to remove that from her board. And I said, but this was something that you said you wanted to do, and you're going to finish. You don't have to do it next year. It does not have to go on your, and it did not go on her board the next year. She did her piano for 3-4 years. She was done. And when she was done, that's fine. And she put something else on that board. But so for us, it kind of helps balance out. You can't just put a bunch of stuff on there. It gives them a better guide. And it also helps them understand that, hey, what you start, you also need to try to finish as well. Okay. So I know we talked about this, the process, and this was in kind of the write-up beforehand, but I believe firmly and strongly about a word of the year. So my method starts with a word of the year because I like it to go in the middle of my board. And it's really what centers me. It's the thing when all else seems lost, I can refocus on that word and kind of find my peace again. I can find my ground, my footing. So I always ask people to choose a word of the year. Typically, we know what that is because we have an idea of what we're working to accomplish. So there's a lot of different ones here. In the workbook, there's a lot of options. And I always tell people that the Webster's dictionary is very large. So you don't have to choose from this list. If there's something on here that's not on here that you're thinking, absolutely choose that word. But I love this because to me, it's what sums up what you are working to achieve for that year.
I just really want to jump in because it's incredible that you're mentioning this. This year, my husband and I decided that we are going to have a word of the year for our family.
Oh,
and
yes. Awesome.
We took it all the way to the extent that our rug, what do you call it? Like a floor mat outside our front door. Every year we're gonna get a custom floor mat with the word of the year, and have my son, who's only about to be 2, every year we're gonna collect a picture of him standing by the front door with the rug and the and the word of the year. This year is our year of giving. So when you approach my front door, some people might think we're the giving family. I know some people put their last name. Yes. And so throughout the year, we're collecting pictures of, everything that resembles the family word of the year. So I can make a scrapbook and show my son, that picture by him by the door and all the things we did that year. So that's awesome.
I love that. That is so intentional. And those will be oh my gosh, those will be the memories that that he grows up remembering too and thinking about, and then can carry that on as well. I love the idea of creating that legacy of practices that he also could share with his family one day. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. That give me chills. Yeah, that's awesome. And I love the rug idea. That is so cool to do a custom rug with that word of the year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do any of you guys do a word of the year? Have you done one before, or do you kind of in general in practice consistently do one?
I love the idea of a word of the year. I haven't done it, but ironically enough, I did just pick one this morning, which was completely independent of this topic. And it's freedom. So it's creative and financial freedom. So I went with freedom, and honestly, it was just this morning. Without even getting the email about this.
Right. Oh, wow. No, that is so great. I love that word. That is a very powerful word. Oh my goodness. So interestingly enough, and I'll just use this as an example. So I love that you said, the kind of the creative and the financial. One thing that I have also found is typically when people have their word of the year, this is always every year astounded me in so many ways. I can't even, it's almost indescribable, but my word ends up taking on a different like way, shape, form, however you can describe it. It's like at the onset of the year, my word of the year meant one thing to me. And by the end of the year, it meant something totally different. Which I also think in and of itself is so cool. And I am trying to even coin this phenomenon because I find consistently that clients or even corporate groups that where I'll check in with them multiple times a year, because I have some contracts where I'll go in and check in with them quarterly. So Blythe, when you said that you do your quarterly goals, I'm like, oh, that's totally speaking my language, because I came from corporate and a lot of corporate groups. The level of consistency that I'm really wanting them to implement is I want to check in with them multiple times a year. And it's crazy cool to talk with participants who are, say, 3 months ago when I first took your workshop, this was my word of the year, was, say it was peace, but now, like, oh my goodness, that peace has just meant so many different things. I wanted it to really mean this, but now it's taken on a completely different form of meaning they've either had to become the peacemaker, or they've been the person like extending peace to people. Not that they necessarily wanted to bring peace into their life, which is maybe what they intentionally meant at the beginning, that they just wanted things to kind of be calm and peaceful. But now they're finding that peace is coming into their life in a totally different way. All right. So the next aspect of it is core values. And I really say this because, especially as entrepreneurs too, we really need to know what our core values are. What are the things I always go back to my corporate upbringing, because anytime you sign on to work for a company or corporation, they always have their core values listed. This is what we stand for. It's our core values, our mission statement. No one ever asked me what my core values were, though. When I was interviewing, it was, well, this is what we stand for. Do you see yourself fitting? Okay, well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you didn't ask me, so let me figure that out. So I took the time to see, these are my core values. These are the things that I stand for. So if a company doesn't align with that, then they're probably not going to be a good fit for me. This was something consistently throughout the pandemic, that when we saw the mass what they called the massive, resignation of the Great Resignation. This is something that a lot of people purportedly said was one of the reasons that core values stopped aligning with who they were working for, and they found themselves becoming more centered and more aligned either with another company or with developing it out on their own and realizing, yeah, these are my core values and I'm going to go do my own thing. 50% of the US will be freelancing by 2027. So I think that's also a really cool statistic when you think about all of the motion that was kind of put into play when the pandemic happened. I think a lot of people had those light bulb moments. I know I myself did. That was when I exited corporate and decided, yeah, I can do something more meaningful, more purposeful with my life, and truly understand what my core values are. And then the next one is that mission statement. So just to kind of follow it up, and writing out that mission, that the mission, vision, and kind of the core values. As you probably built your business plans for your entrepreneurial journey, you most likely wrote what that mission was. Revisit that from time to time. Revisit it, tweak it, recalibrate it. There might be things that are more meaningful to you now, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 6 years into your business than there was at the onset of it. So continuing to develop that out is something that also is hugely important to just our overall, the value that we bring, and the value and the purpose and the meaning that we have in our lives. And so I shared, this is my mission statement. So if you ever go on my LinkedIn, this is what's on there. This is my mission statement for life. They encompass a lot of my core values. And this is what I stand for. And I think when I look at my company and what I strive to achieve is really deep connection. I want to foster growth and development in others. I want others to become the best version of themselves. Like, that is my passion and purpose, is to just have them feel and walk away with feeling more aligned with who they are and owning that as well. I firmly believe that how we show up in the workplace is how we should show up in our personal life, and vice versa. And so often I think we have two competing personalities that are constantly almost a tug of war with each other, and it's exhausting. So if I can align myself with who I am personally, with who I am and who I want to be and becoming professionally, then I'm always going to be me. And you're going to get me in every aspect of my life as 100% my most authentic self. Awesome. Thank you. All right. So then we get to the core goals. So I break them down into 3. Like I said, we don't want to overwhelm ourselves, and our brain really kind of metabolizes things in 3s. So it's broken down into personal, professional, or academic. Cause like I said, I work with school kids as well. And so we'll go through this sometimes. The play and the fun goal, I really honestly should rebrand this or reframe this as the do the dang thing goal, because your personal goal is really asking you to look more inward and what developmentally do you want to work on with yourself, whether that is, seeking therapy or reading those books, really self-care, leaning into yourself, challenging yourself to a fitness goal. It runs the gamut, better planning, better, working on a family, etc. Your personal, pretty standard. If you're building if you're building a business, if you're wanting to scale your business, what does that look like from a professional aspect? What are the tools you're going to need? What are the resources? So outlining that goal and then working backwards in order to build out the framework for those positive habits. And then the last one is everyone's personal favorite, honestly, because it's that do the dang thing goal. Like I said, I really should just rebrand it as that, because it's the goal that it's the trip. It's the take the trip. It's the do the dang thing. We've been saying for years, we're going to go here. I've been saying for years, I'm going to go visit my mom. I've been saying for years, I'm going to get my girls together and we're going to do a trip, but we never do it. This is the goal that challenges you to take the time to make the goal and set the framework to make it happen. Sorry, I don't know what that was. Okay. So we talked earlier about kind of building, we're essentially like building a house when you think about it. And the foundation are building positive habits. And then you layer your goals on top. Then you layer your mission statement, your core values. And at the very top, you've got your word of the year. So we're kind of deconstructing this house. And the way that I love to think about building positive habits is, what is something that is small enough to where I'm not going to get overwhelmed on a daily basis and I'm going to be able to be consistent with it. That's essentially what we're working on. Like I said earlier, I don't necessarily buy into this notion that it only takes 21 to 28 days to build a habit. I think in order to move, and I think science tells us to really move from that conscious state to an unconscious state, it takes more like 3 to 6 months. Think about when you were a kid, like how many times you had to be reminded to brush your teeth or make your bed or do the basic things that you knew you needed to do every day, but it just took you a while to incorporate that into your life. So when we build positive habits, we can build them around health and wellness, around monthly savings goals, getting out of debt. But what does that truly look like? Like I said, the positive habits, these become the minute little steps. These become the little daily, I guess, Inbal, to your comment earlier, tasks or to-do list items that you need to think about. Oftentimes when people set savings goals, one thing that overwhelms them is that the big goal that they have to save in order to accomplish. So if it's $2,000 or if it's $1,000 a month, but when broken down into a weekly or daily goal, it's a lot more manageable. So even helping people define it that way. Bianca, you mentioned about KPIs. That's a great way to break down those KPIs, which I'm sure you're already doing, but helping team members understand just what the little piece is, because it all builds up to the bigger. But we can really focus. Remember, we're creating frequency illusion. We're creating frequency bias. So I can't see $2,000 because that's so far in the future, but I can see $10 a day. I can see that. I can actualize what that looks like in my life in order to save up. I use a ton of trackers. So I'm a big recycler, but I'm also a big user of paper. So I promise I try to do my part to give back. I try to be carbon neutral so that my footprint isn't impacting our world. But one thing that I get a lot of benefit or gain a lot of benefit out of are creating trackers. And I'll create them for anything. If I am working to drink 64 to 75 ounces of water a day, I got a tracker for it. And every day, because we know there's something about the physical action of crossing things off of a list that also primes and preps our brain for more. It gets us excited. It actually fuels us with more energy and momentum, and thus creating additional motivation to continue that action. Yeah, cheers to trackers. Yes, yes. I love trackers. I'm a big fan of them. I have a lot of them. So if you want, and well, I can send them all to you. I've got ones for working out. I've got ones for reading. You know, the average, they say if you want to read about 30 books a year, it comes down to about 10 pages a day. And that averages out. And that's it, depending on the average size of the book, of course. I always like to kind of test these statistics out. And so actually this whole year, I've been reading 10 pages a day to prove that whether or not I'm going to get to 30. So I read one in like 2 days because it was a really small book, and I read way more than 10 pages. So I just wrote the amount of pages that I read. But I'm trying to figure out, is it really 30 or is this like a way off statistic? Because I read it somewhere and I'm like, what kind of books are they reading? Because that seems, I don't know, that seems high. I guess I read books that have a lot of pages in them, um, but that is the average statistic that they say, is that if you read 10 pages a day, by the end of the year, you will have read 30 books. So I created a tracker for that. I've created ones for, like I said, for working out. I do weekly meal planning with the family. It's super basic and simple, but it just helps me to get aligned. These are all positive habits that I am building that keep me focused. Yet again, like I said, because I've got so much I'm working to focus on, I'm trying to streamline content, information, everything to only put in my life what it is that I'm really working to achieve. If you're a fan of a morning routine, I've got some great resources for you. The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma is a phenomenal resource. There's also an evening routine. This is something that I always tell people, what works for you is what works for you. And I have friends of mine who are night owls. And there's science that says that physiologically, biologically, there are people who just perform better at night. Like that's when they're in their prime. Robin Sharma will tell you that science says that the first 4 hours of our day are the most productive. But I can tell you that there was a time in my life when 8 o'clock came around, and between the hours of 8 and midnight, I could get a ton of stuff done. I was just like a little engine, just pumping things out, and the brain, the juices were flowing and everything. I think we go through phases in our life. That's why our cells literally regenerate every 7 years. We become a completely different person physically, like physiologically we do. And that's why our tastes change. That's why our friends change. That's why all of these things change, because we're constantly evolving. So what worked for us at one point might not work for us now. Sticking to a morning routine because everyone says that it works might not be the best thing for you, but find what works. I think the ultimate goal is in and of itself with that is to find what works for you and become consistent with it. Yeah, morning is my least routine. Yes. All right. So the guiding questions, and these are ones that I ask myself pretty consistently, but I always focus on the first and the last. And the reason is because everyone has one goal that they want to achieve regardless. I always say the proverbial, like, shit hits the fan. This is the goal that you're like, I am going to, come hell or high water, this is the goal that I'm going to achieve this year. Every other goal can go by the wayside, and I'll just put it I'll put it on the board for next year. But this is the one. And the reason is because I want you to have that much of a like passion and purpose around that one goal to make it happen. Because what we find is when we have that much enthusiasm around it, we by nature and by virtue accomplish our other goals. So really, like, I always tell people to circle that one goal that's like the one, and maybe put a couple of images or a few images around that one goal for what you want to achieve and how you want to make that. These are other ones that will help you in the process. And then the last one is also very important because it's how will you celebrate your achievement? I believe strongly that we do not celebrate ourselves enough. We wait till the very end, once we've accomplished the goal, to give ourselves the moment to breathe. We give ourselves the acknowledgement, and then we ever so quickly move on to the next goal. It's such a miss when we're not celebrating the small wins along the way, because what we're telling ourselves is that we're really not enough until we've accomplished the big thing. And every day we wake up, we're enough. With women, especially empowering women, And I see this so much in my daughter. And I think this is why I'm so passionate about this, because I don't want her to fall into the same patterns and pitfalls that I did when I was younger. It's when I get the A that I am valuable. It's when I achieve the award that I can say that I was good enough or I was successful. We are successful every day by freaking making it through the day, especially when we become moms and we become entrepreneurs and we become people who are managing other people, or we're contributing to a family or contributing to a relationship or to a company. We are building success daily, and we discount that so often because we're waiting for some pivotal, monumental moment for us to say, oh, okay, now I can pat myself on the back. There are weeks that I get through the end of the week. Friday will be one of them. I told my husband, I said, we're going out for a celebration. And he's like, well, what are we celebrating? And I'm like, the week. We're celebrating that we made it through the week. Because May, I don't know if you guys follow Jen Hatmaker, but I adore her. And May is the month that schools and colleges and companies and everyone tries to cram everything into everything. May is like, how many more days can we cram into the month of May? How many more award ceremonies or banquets or, things that we can do in the month of May? So it is chaotic, it is hectic. And I find myself completely frazzled in this month often. Oh, and by the way, let's make May the month for mothers. Let's give them Mother's Day too. In the midst of graduation parties and celebrations and all the things that we have to do, let's toss them Mother's Day.
Somebody
So
once,
you what?
Somebody once told me something like that you can do that's super, super simple. She creates little envelopes with goals or tasks, big and small. So like, get my first subscriber, or, sell my business for $100 million, right? It's everything in between. And she puts like a little gift to herself in that envelope. So it could be like a cup of coffee or a trip around the world. And it's like all those things. So whenever she accomplishes even the smallest goal, she gets to celebrate herself, because I totally agree with you. We're like, oh, great. So I have 100 subscribers. Now I need 1,000, but it's like, did you celebrate that 100? Cause like, that's a huge accomplishment too, So that was a trick that she talked about. And I really love that idea.
I love that idea. I do something different. What you reminded me of is something that I do for myself every year, which is write a letter to myself every month. And I write them all at the beginning of the year. And then I put January, February, all the way through to December. And then I open it on the first day of the next month. So like with January, I just kind of write it to myself. And then at the end of the month before I open February's, I read it. And it's typically just me, like I said, hyping myself up, pumping myself up. But I love aligning that with celebrating your achievements. That is a fantastic thing that she does. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's awesome. I might incorporate that now. I might start doing that, just like leaving little envelopes to myself, or yes, little note cards, and then flip them over and be like, oh, this is what I get. Yes. But I always want participants especially, to think about what it is that they want to celebrate, and that to your point, it can be everything to the big trip, to just going out and asking for 30 minutes or 45 minutes to go sit in a coffee shop by yourself, just to like soak it in.
Yep. Maria, just want to let you know we have about 18 minutes left.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yep. Actually, I'm almost done. So yep. So at work, this is me at work, and just helping others create the vision for their life. And so as we wrap this up, I think I shared with you guys that this process started for me when I was in the third grade. And so I'm just gonna flip through these slides, because these are just kind of, a little bit about what I do. But my story really begins in Lexington. And when I was in the third grade, my teacher actually asked us to get out a piece of paper and write down 3 things that we wanted to do, or wanted to accomplish. Like I said, she gave us no parameters. This just tells you a little bit about me. I'm a daughter of an immigrant from Argentina. My father came here when he was 26 years old, did not speak a word of English, so I had to learn the language. And so one of the things and he also had an 8th grade education. And so this ties into one of my goals that I wrote, which was to graduate from college, because it was very important to me to have an education because my dad didn't have that. My dad's gift was working with horses, training them, exercising them, breeding them, and then connecting with owners to ensure. And so this was actually taken at my dad's farm. And this was something that he built when he came to this country. And so it also speaks to the beauty of the American dream as well. But college was very, very important to both of my parents. They wanted us to go to college because neither one of them actually had that opportunity. My mom went to a 2-year business school and did not get to go to a 4-year college institution like she wanted to. So that was very important. Yeah, so I've always been a dreamer. This is me with my dad. And so University of Kentucky was very important to us as well because it was our local. We grew up in a college town. And I've always just been a dreamer. And I always called myself, like a future visionary and someone who just innovated a new way to not necessarily create something different, but just a new way to live my life. So the top 3 goals that I wrote down were these. I wanted to graduate college. I wanted to become Miss Kentucky. And that kind of goes back to when I was about 6 years old and I started watching the Miss America pageant with my mom. And I decided that I wanted to be that person that represented our state. And then a US Senator, no clue, but I will tell you this. At 8 years of age is probably because we did watch C-SPAN a lot, believe it or not. That's actually one way that my dad learned the English language was watching shows, watching like politicians and like listening to them on C-SPAN and watching news shows. Similarly to how people have said that they'll watch like telenovelas if they want to learn Spanish. So is this the same type of situation? He just watched a lot of TV to learn and listen to people. So we did watch a lot of C-SPAN. And then I think I also just wanted to impress my teacher. So I thought, you know what, this is really cool. I heard my dad talk about being a US Senator a lot, like, and kind of what it takes and all this. So I'll put that on there. But ironically, it actually shaped my collegiate journey because I ended up graduating from college in May of 2004 from the University of Kentucky. And I had a partial scholarship. So I almost had all of my college paid for. And I double majored in political science and psychology. And I got a minor in vocal performance. That was my partial scholarship. I won Miss Kentucky a month after I graduated from college, and I toured the state. I competed at Miss America. I had that opportunity that I had wanted for so long. That had stayed on that Post-it note since I was 8 years old. Got to meet amazing friends. My dad got to walk me on stage. A dear friend of mine who actually won Miss America from Kentucky, who interviewed me on stage, which was another kind of like cool moment, kind of coming like full circle moment coming together. But I ended up winning non-finalist interview award, and that scholarship alone, and then the scholarship that I got to compete at Miss America completed my college education. I won over $50,000 competing over 4 years. So I always give a shout out to the Miss America organization because it's an amazing, incredible organization. I married this is kind of like life after the crown and kind of pursuing things after these 3 goals, because after these 3 goals that people are always like, well, what next? I had so many other goals. I wanted to get married. I wanted to start a family, and I wanted to start my career. Those kind of became my 3 new goals outside. Like I said, I negated that other one, but I met my husband when I was 17. This is us now, actually a couple years ago in Hawaii. And we have 3 kids. So 15, 13, and 6. We've been married almost 18 years. And like I said, we vision board together as a family, and it's something that we all truly enjoy. But I always share with people too that my goal of becoming a US Senator, yeah, I think at one point, even when I was in college, I thought that was maybe even a viable path. And then somewhere along the way, I realized, nope, that's not what I want to do. I don't ever want to be a senator. No, thank you. Do not sign me up for that. And I always share this with people to say, because this is kind of where I go back to, remember what Warren Buffett said, millionaires and billionaires, they're willing to tweak their goals. They're willing to walk away from something that doesn't fit within their life. They're willing to say, you know what? I changed my mind, and this isn't an important priority to me anymore. This isn't something that I actually want to achieve. So I said no to it. All right. So then life is good, yet why did I want more? And so this kind of comes into me telling a little bit about my entrepreneurial journey. And I always say, good things never come from comfort zones. If we want success, we must get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's where, like I said, that fear. So in 2019, we took a trip to Scotland to visit some friends that we had met in a pub in Dublin 2 years prior. And we had just become fast friends with them and their entire family. They lived in Inverness, Scotland. We said, we've never been to Scotland. Let's go. So right before the pandemic, it was the fall of 2019. I was having a lot of different things go on in my life. We had uprooted our family yet again because we'd moved 4 times in a period of about 9 years. So we were just constantly facing kind of an inconsistency. And you know what I do. I do goal setting. I do consistency. My life is rooted in consistency. So for someone to be uprooted so many times, I have to employ my own process over and over and over to find my footing and to get back to a place where I feel like I have that consistency in my life. But in 2019, I was really searching for that. And I found myself on this bridge in Scotland, feeling really lost. And so this is the River Ness, and it overlooks this gorgeous, gorgeous, beautiful river that flows is all the way along through Scotland, through Inverness in that area. And so I said to myself to remember this moment, because it was at this moment that I kind of threw my hands up and was like, I need to know like what's going, like, I just reflected and I was like, I need to know what's going on in my life. Like, I need to find a better purpose. I need to align. And we spent a good hour and a half, just kind of walking around this area, walking around this bridge. And I remember looking out on that river and thinking, I can't stay where I'm at. I have to leave. And I've got to do something that scares the absolute crap out of me, because my corporate journey was super safe. I was making a ton of money. I had a phenomenal team. I loved what I did, but I wasn't joy filled. I wasn't purpose filled. I didn't feel like I had a lot of meaning in my life. So I wanted to remember that moment, because that was the start of that journey. And I always ask people what their River Ness moment is. Like, what is their moment? Like when, and so I guess that's how I'm going to wrap it up, because I always want to know, this is just also too, because I love connecting with people. What was your moment that you knew like you had to go in a different path? You needed to break that mold and pursue something different, pursue your own path.
I think for me, the moment is kind of now. I'm just at that point of my life where I'm ready to do something different. So I'm ready to have an exit strategy where I sell my business and start something new. Just kind of came up on me, and I'm like, I'm done. Like I just something happened. I'm just done. I'm burnt out. I want to have a different path moving forward, and I know that. So it's that point in life where you get to when you make the decision to pursue significance instead of success.
Oh, I love that. That's so profound. Thank you.
I didn't make it up.
I know.
I don't want to take credit for it. I just resonate.
I never would have known if you didn't. So I would have attributed it to you. But that is so true. Oh, wow. I love that. Significance over, success. Love that. And I know you had said that when your daughter was born.
Yeah, it made me shift completely from like what I was doing to where I wanted to go. So, and then it's always that, push. You always want your children to kind of see you work hard towards something. So yeah, that was it for me.
Awesome.
So weird, but my answer is literally the combination of Renee and Inbal. My son is 22 months, so he's just shy of being 2 years old. And I'm kind of young. I got into my career when I was young, so it's kind of the only thing I've been doing. I got into real estate very, very young. And so I've never really had a moment of that like shift where I want to do something different per se. I just want to do something more. And definitely after my son was born, I started feeling like Renee was saying, though, I want to have more of significance versus career, because the career is great. Everything's great. I just feel like there's something more. And mostly it's because now I'm a mom, I think. Mhm.
I hear that a lot too, especially from new moms, women, that yes, it's almost that light bulb goes off. Things just start to shift and change. So, Blythe, do you want to share?
Sure. So I've always wanted to have my own business, but I just kind of put it away after getting in the advertising agency world. I was like, oh my God. But then from 2015 to 2020, I ended up losing both of my parents. And in that time span, taking care of them. And after they were gone, I was like, this is my time and I need to start prioritizing myself and what I want. So I just took control of my health because I was kind of letting that go because there was only so much I could take. And then I officially started my business. Well, in 2021, I incorporated. So, and that's just, yeah. And then like my word for the year is embrace. And it's just, I want to remind myself, like, you never know what's going to happen. We only have so much time on this planet, and to enjoy it and to do things that make me happy and bring me joy, and to um, fulfill this dream that I've had since I was, yeah, literally in my senior memory book, I wrote, I will own my own ad agency one day. So it took me many decades later, but I'm finally doing it, and it's hard as heck, but yeah, I wouldn't change it. And I always think my parents, my business name is inspired by my parents. So I always think I have the little cheerleaders up in heaven cheering me on every time I take one little, even if it's small or big step, that I always try to remember that and celebrate it. So
Yes. Oh, well, that's fantastic. I love how it's all coming full circle for you too. You said you wrote in your book, you will own an ad agency, and it's coming together. And yeah, and I think too that one thing that society tells us that we have to have a timeline on things. You know, we have to have, like, we have to achieve things by a certain date. I know that I have felt very pressured by that at times in my life. And then I think the most freeing feeling that I had was just letting go of that and being like, you know what, I'm going to accomplish it when I accomplish it, but at least I'm doing the steps now. I would much rather look back in 5 years and say, wow, I actually did it and look how far I've come, than, look back and say, oh, I wish I would have started. I wish I would have, started doing that. So that's awesome. And I love what Bianca said. Yes, the birth of some and the loss of others, right? That's those ebbs and flows of life, of building that out. And I love your word of the year. That's a great one. Thank you for sharing that too. So that and that's it. I love ending it with that. Blythe, I know you said you lived in Atlanta. We used to live in Marietta. So we were in the Marietta area, moved to Nashville. We've lived all over the Southeast, never outside. My husband's a West Coast boy, born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, but he has found his way out south, and we've never left. So we keep getting further and further too, because now we are firmly planted, at least for the next 12 to 15 years, in South Florida. So in the Fort Lauderdale area. Yes.
We are on our way from Las Vegas either to Nashville or Tampa.
Oh, okay. Well, I've lived in Nashville. It's a great place to live and raise a family. So if you ever need any advice on that one, let me know, because we lived in Brentwood, right outside of the city, and it was a great place. And where we lived in Atlanta was great too. We really never lived in a place that we didn't enjoy or love or meet fantastic people. So
wonderful. Thank you.
yes. But I just love that you guys joined today. I appreciate you guys participating. And oh, awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, it's a great community. But thank you so much for taking the time to invest in yourself. I think that's the biggest piece of it, is taking time for yourself and not feeling guilty about it. And if anything, using it to empower you to propel yourself forward. Because so much of our days can be rooted in, like, just that lack of motivation. But if we just get in there and start doing it, we find the motivation. And I always say the key to vision imagery really is looking at it every single day. There's no wrong way to vision imagery, to put together your board. Whatever images, words, everything speak to you, that's what speaks to you. But if you just do it and then put it to the side, Well, that's when it doesn't work. So you got to put it somewhere where you're going to be able to see it every single day. Write those post-it notes to yourself. Do the cards that Imbal mentioned about the oh my gosh, the celebrating the achievement. Oh my goodness, I love that. Write a letter to yourself if you want to do it at the beginning of the year, and write it for the whole year, and then you read it in December 31st. See how far you've come. Or you can write monthly letters to yourself, which is what I like to do. I prefer that. But most corporate groups that I work with, we just do one big letter. We just do one letter for the whole year to kind of encompass everything that they're working to achieve, so that at the end they can look back at everything that they have done and feel really proud about the steps that they took throughout that year. But more than anything, I just want you guys to embrace the power of vision imagery and create the vision for your life.
Thank you so much, Maria.
Thank
This was
you.